My son looks outside the window every night at 2:12 a.m. Exactly 5 minutes later there is knocking on the door. It started about a month ago. I woke up in the middle of the night, thirsty as hell. As I stumbled to the kitchen for a glass of water, I noticed a sliver of light coming from Ethan's room. The door was cracked open, and I could see his small silhouette framed against the window. "Ethan?" I called softly, pushing the door open. "What are you doing up, buddy?" He didn't turn around. He just stood there, staring out into the darkness. "Ethan?" I tried again, a little louder this time. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Daddy, it's time," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. A shiver ran down my spine. "Time for what, bud?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he climbed back into bed and pulled the covers up to his chin. Within seconds, he was fast asleep. I checked my phone. 2:12 a.m. Weird, but kids do strange things sometimes, right? I tucked Ethan in and went back to bed, chalking it up to a random night terror or sleepwalking episode. The next night, I woke up again around 2 a.m. Call it parental instinct or just paranoia, but something made me check on Ethan. Sure enough, there he was at the window again. I checked my phone, 2:12 a.m. on the dot. This time, I didn't say anything. I just watched him from the doorway. He stood there, perfectly still, for exactly 5 minutes. Then, just as I was about to intervene, a sound pierced the silence that made my skin crawl. Knock. 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 3 sharp raps on our front door. Ethan didn't react. He just climbed back into bed like nothing had happened. With my heart pounding in my chest, I crept downstairs and peered through the peephole. The porch light illuminated an empty stoop. No one was there. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe some drunk teenager playing a prank. But a nagging feeling in my gut told me something wasn't right. For the next week, the same thing happened every single night. Ethan at the window at 2:12 a.m. Knocking at 2:17 a.m. No one at the door. I tried talking to Ethan about it during the day, but he had no memory of getting up at night. He just looked at me with those big, innocent eyes and asked if we could have pancakes for breakfast. I was starting to lose it. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't focus at work. Every night, I'd sit on the stairs, watching Ethan's door, waiting for 2:12 a.m. with a mixture of dread and morbid curiosity. One night, about 10 days in, I decided to do something different. At 2:10 a.m., I quietly entered Ethan's room and stood next to his bed. As the clock ticked over to 2:12, his eyes snapped open. He sat up, but when he saw me, he froze. "Daddy," he whispered, "you shouldn't be here." "Why not, buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Because," he said, his eyes darting to the window, "she's waiting." My mouth went dry. "Who's waiting, Ethan?" But before he could answer, the knocking started. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from the other side of Ethan's bedroom window. Knock. 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 The knocking stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the eerie silence that followed, I could hear my own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice trembling, "get away from the window. Now." But my son didn't move. His eyes were fixed on something outside, something I couldn't see. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his small hand and pressed it against the glass. That's when I saw it. A hand on the other side of the window, mirroring Ethan's. Long, skeletal fingers with blackened nails. The skin was pale and waxy, like that of a corpse left too long in water. "Jesus Christ," I yelled, lunging forward to grab Ethan. But as soon as my fingers touched his shoulder, he let out an ear-piercing scream that made me stagger backward. The hand outside the window vanished, and Ethan collapsed onto the floor, his body convulsing violently. I scooped him up, my mind reeling with panic. As I turned to rush him out of the room, my eyes caught something that made me freeze in my tracks. There, scratched into the window glass, were 5 words, "I'm coming for him, John." A wave of dread washed over me. How the hell did it know my name? I ran downstairs with Ethan in my arms, fumbling for my phone to call 911. But as soon as I hit the bottom step, every light in the house flickered and died. In the pitch darkness, I heard something that sent chills down my spine. Scritch. 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 The sound of nails dragging across wood, coming from every direction at once. "Daddy," Ethan whimpered, his small body trembling against mine, "she's inside now." I sprinted for the front door, my free hand outstretched in the darkness. But when I grabbed the doorknob, it was ice cold and slick with something wet. I yanked my hand back, feeling warm liquid dripping down my wrist. The coppery smell of blood filled my nostrils. "You can't leave, John," a voice whispered, so close I could feel fetid breath on my neck. It sounded like Marie, but wrong. Like her voice was being forced through a throat full of gravel. "We're a family again." "You're not Marie," I choked out, backing away. "My wife is dead." A chilling laugh echoed through the house. "Dead? Oh, John. I'm so much more than dead." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. I blinked, momentarily blinded. When my vision cleared, I saw her. Marie stood at the foot of the stairs. But it wasn't the Marie I remembered. Her skin was gray and bloated, her eyes sunken and filled with a sickly yellow light. Her once beautiful hair hung in wet, rotting clumps around her face. She wore the same dress we buried her in, now stained with dirt and God knows what else. Marie, I breathed, unable to believe what I was seeing. Her mouth stretched into an impossibly wide grin, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. I've come to take our son home, John. It's time for Ethan to join me. Ethan squirmed in my arms, reaching out towards the thing that looked like his mother. Mommy? He called, his voice a mixture of fear and longing. The creature's eyes locked onto Ethan, and she took a step forward. The floorboards creaked and squelched under her bare, mud-caked feet. No, I shouted, clutching Ethan tighter. You're not taking him. I turned and ran for the kitchen, my mind racing. Salt. I needed salt. Wasn't that supposed to work against spirits or something? As I fumbled through the cabinets, I could hear Marie's wet footsteps getting closer. The air grew cold, and the putrid stench of decay filled the room. Oh, John, her voice sing-songed from just outside the kitchen. You can't protect him forever. Ethan belongs with me now. I finally found the salt and turned around, ready to throw it. But what I saw made the container slip from my numb fingers. Marie stood in the doorway, but her body was wrong. Her limbs were elongated, joints bent at impossible angles. Her head lolled to one side, neck stretched and distorted. And behind her, writhing in the shadows, were dozens of arms, reaching, grasping. Ethan screamed. In that moment, as I stared into the abyss of that horrifying scene, I knew our lives would never be the same. Whatever was wearing Marie's face, whatever had been coming for my son night after night, it wasn't going to stop. And I had no idea how to fight it. The thing that wasn't Marie lurched forward, its grotesque limbs scrabbling across the kitchen floor. I backed away, clutching Ethan to my chest, my mind blank with terror. My back hit the kitchen counter, and I realized we were trapped. Please, I begged, though I knew reasoning with this creature was futile. Please, just leave us alone. The thing cocked its head at an unnatural angle, Marie's once beautiful features twisting into a mockery of confusion. Leave you alone? But John, we're family. And families should be together. Forever. One of its many arms shot out, impossibly fast, grabbing my ankle. I yelped as icy fingers dug into my flesh, the chill spreading up my leg like poison. Ethan whimpered in my arms, his small body shaking uncontrollably. In that moment of pure desperation, something inside me snapped. A surge of protective rage coursed through my veins, burning away the paralyzing fear. I wouldn't let this thing take my son. I couldn't. With a roar, I kicked out at the creature's face. My foot connected with a sickening squelch, and it reeled back, momentarily stunned. I seized the opportunity, charging past it towards the basement door. If we couldn't leave the house, maybe we could find a way to trap it. I slammed the basement door behind us and fumbled for the light switch. The dim bulb flickered to life, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. Ethan clung to me, his face buried in my shoulder. Daddy, he whispered, I'm scared. I know, buddy, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But we're gonna be okay. I promise. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the basement, partially hidden behind some old boxes, was a door I'd never noticed before. It looked ancient, its wood warped and stained with age. From upstairs came the sounds of splintering wood and shattering glass. The creature was tearing the house apart looking for us. With no other choice, I approached the mysterious door. As I reached for the handle, Ethan suddenly spoke up. That's where Mommy comes from, he said matter-of-factly. I froze. What do you mean, Ethan? He pointed at the door. Every night at 2:12, that door opens. Mommy comes out and goes to my window. She says she misses us and wants us to come with her. But I was scared, so I didn't open the window. My mind reeled. How long had this been going on? And why 2:12 a.m.? Then it hit me. 2:12 a.m. February 12th. The day Marie died. Before I could process this revelation, the basement door exploded inward. The creature that wore Marie's face came slithering down the stairs, its body contorting in ways that defied physics. Found you, it hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers. I grabbed the handle of the mysterious door and yanked it open. Beyond it was not the foundation of our house, but a swirling vortex of shadows and mist. The air that rushed out was frigid and smelled of decay. The creature let out an inhuman shriek. No. You can't send me back. I won't go alone. It lunged at us, its numerous arms outstretched. In that split second, I made a decision that would haunt me forever. I set Ethan down and kissed his forehead. I love you, buddy. Always remember that. Then, using all my strength, I shoved the creature towards the open door. But as it teetered on the threshold, one of its arms wrapped around my waist. I looked at Ethan, saw the terror and confusion in his eyes. Run, Ethan. Run upstairs and don't look back. The last thing I saw was my son's tear-streaked face as the creature and I fell through the doorway into the abyss beyond. I don't know how long I fell. Time seemed to have no meaning in that place of shadows and whispers. But eventually, I crashed onto what felt like solid ground. I opened my eyes to find myself back in my own basement. The old door had vanished, leaving only a blank wall. Sunlight streamed through the small windows. Morning had come. Painfully, I climbed the stairs, calling out for Ethan. I found him curled up on the living room couch, sleeping peacefully. When I woke him, he had no memory of the night's events. It's been a week since that terrible night. The scratches on Ethan's window are gone, as if they never existed. He no longer gets up at 2:12 a.m. To all appearances, our lives have returned to normal. But I know better. Sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers coming from the basement. And in my dreams, I see Marie, the real Marie, reaching out to me from beyond a door I can never open. I don't know if the creature will find another way back. I don't know if it's truly gone, or if it's just biding its time. All I know is that every night, I check on Ethan at 2:12 a.m. And every night, I pray that the knocking doesn't start again. What happened next? My friend moved to a town where nobody is allowed to take photos at all. They took a photo and figured out the horrifying reason why they aren't allowed to. A couple months ago, my best friend Bryce moved away to a town I'd never heard of before. He had just landed his dream job. It was gutting to say the last, but worse than that, he practically ghosted me after he left. I sent a few texts here and there, even rang him a few times, but heard nothing in return. Having been close friends since we were kids, the experience was jarring and definitely shook my trust in friendship as a concept. Thankfully, he recently sent me a text message, apologizing for the radio silence and claiming that moving and starting a new position had taken over his headspace. He told me I should visit him in his new haunt, and I enthusiastically accepted. We carved out a week that worked for both of us, and the plan was set. Armed with a backlog of Spotify playlists to keep me company, I plugged the address he provided into my GPS and went on my way. It ended up being a lengthy and confusing drive through roads unfamiliar. Finally, I arrived in his neighborhood. I took in the scenery. This new neck of the woods was bizarre to say the least. On the same street housing tacky-looking detached homes stood gothic-looking manors straight out of a Victorian novel. Way too many convenience stores here for such a small community, and did I mention the town center? Well, wouldn't you have it, it was a collection of skyscrapers piercing through the clouds that looked sleeker than anything I'd ever seen before in my city girl life. The town planner clearly had a fragmented personality. I pulled into the driveway of Bryce's fancy cottage. Really, Bryce? A cottage? Ran up the steps, and rapped at the door. He peeked out through his living room curtains, and ever the goofball I knew and loved, shot me a puzzled look for minutes before he finally opened the door. I flung into him and gave my brother bear a big hug. Dude seemed tense. Friend, I exclaimed. Rose, you're here, he replied. Of course. Dude, you made us plan the trip down to the hour. You have gotten mad organized since we last spoke. I settled into the coziest couch I could find in his living room and let the snug air of his new place flood my senses. It was blissful. I had to admire what he'd done with the place. It felt like the culmination of years of settling in, not someplace he had just signed a lease for. Well, I started. Clearly you've struck it big with a new gig. All that's left for you now is finding a girlfriend so you can do all that build a family nonsense everyone's always yapping about. Yeah. Hey, let me get you some coffee, alright? He walked into the kitchen. More curt than I remembered him ever being. I wondered if the girlfriend comment threw him off. It was just a joke, friend. He returned moments later, coffees in hand. He handed me one of the mugs, then sat opposite me on another sofa. So, I gotta say this. Area? Town? Little city? Google wasn't helpful. This neighborhood is pretty quaint. He looked out the window. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I waited for him to break from his stare. He wasn't being particularly hostly. I interrupted with more small talk. Well, how are you settling in? How's life? He leaned back in his seat and scratched the back of his head. Yeah, I'm settling in fine. It's been busy. Definitely spend most of my time thinking about work. Yeah. Tell me more about that. You were pretty tight-lipped about it on text. Is the job everything you hoped it'd be? Not exactly. I poker-faced through the uncomfortable silence, hoping he'd say more. Like, he finally continued, it's definitely not what I studied. Nothing at all like what they pitched me either. It's pretty out there. Well, what are you doing exactly? He hesitated. I could tell he was escaping up into his head. I think my coffee needs a bit more cream. BRB. He left the room again. Yes, he's the kind of guy to say the acronym out loud. I pondered in his absence. Dude was a secret super genius who could land a gig just about anywhere. A job that required him to move to the middle of nowhere and leave his loved ones behind had to be nothing short of astounding. But, hearing him now, he just seemed tired. Uninspired even. I wondered how long this move was really going to last. I stopped myself from ruminating further. This was too much honest reflection for what was supposed to be a vacation. A selfie was in order. I pulled out my phone, coffee in hand and Bryce's welcoming abode in the background. I already had the caption for the Instagram story, finally found him you guys. I waited for him to round the corner. He emerged, I clicked. Snap. The light flashed to immortalize a pretty derpy looking me, and Bryce, mug caught in mid-fall, with his arm outstretched violently screaming no. Paralyzed by his yell, I turned to clock the shattered mug and liquid coffee beans spilling onto his hardwood floor. Shit. I looked up at him. Sorry, what happened? Did I just? His attention turned from me to the front door. He ran to it, checked the lock, then pulled at the door as if to test its integrity. He did the same with the balcony door, muttering to himself along the way. I'm so stupid. Of course she was gonna take a picture. Why would I be so careless? I should have known I should have fucking known. Hey, I walked up to him. It was just a selfie, Bri. I'm sorry if it caught you off guard. He took a deep breath, then spoke in a tone that was very unbecoming of the Bryce I knew. It's my fault. I'm the moron. You always take pictures. It's what you fucking do. And what did I do? I left you alone, twice. I fucked us. Sorry, but you are being incredibly rude right now. Explain yourself. A stern look. We are not supposed to take photos. I raised my eyebrows. Not supposed to take photos of what? Your house? Anything. Anything at all in the town. I became convinced this was all an elaborate bit he'd been planning in anticipation of my arrival. I chuckled accordingly. That sounds stupid. A touch of softness returned to his eyes. I was hoping I'd get a chance to ease you into the explanation, but fuck, there's no easy way to break this to you, is there? ... What on earth are you talking about? His glance returned to the living room window. He stared out for what felt like an eternity. I idled with him, secretly wondering if my friend had become a head case since I last saw him. He'd never shown signs of being particularly paranoid or volatile, but maybe something had changed since the move. The sound of soft tapping against the window wasn't immediately obvious. When I finally noticed it, I saw a silhouette in the front yard below. Someone, or rather, something, was outside, stretching and reaching to try to peer into our elevated living room window. Hide behind the sofa, said Bryce. Are you for real? Do it. Now. The desperation in his voice was convincing. I begrudgingly followed the orders and crouched against the end of the sofa I was just sitting on. I peeked ever so slightly to watch Bryce approach the window. There's nothing here for you. Bryce yelled at the stranger in the front yard. A beat of silence. The figure outside slowly lifted its hands, clutching a crumpled piece of paper between them which it then pressed against the window. It was the selfie I'd just taken. Instinctively, I laughed. It took a few seconds for logic to flood my brain and for me to wonder how on earth a stranger had a printout of a photo I just took. That isn't ours. No photos were taken here. The photo disappeared from view. Then, the entity raised a single finger, tapping the window and pointing in my direction. No one else is here. Bryce held his ground for a moment. Then, he closed the curtains. He sat beside me on the living room floor and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. I was in denial. How is that even? Shh, Bryce interrupted. He'll be gone soon. Minutes passed, and the tapping finally subsided. Like I said, Bryce broke the silence. I was hoping we'd get a second to settle in first. How does someone even do that? Like, technologically, how the fuck could someone do that with my phone? I don't get it. I'm gonna need you to calm down for a second. Bryce, what the fuck is going on? With a grimace and a restless shuffle, he struggled to find the right words. So, he finally spoke. Let's rewind a bit. I moved to a new town for a job that I couldn't turn down. Right. When I got here, I knew pretty much immediately that something was very wrong. First, I thought I was renting this place, but when I arrived, there was a deed taped to the front door signed in my name. My boss for the job I hadn't even started yet stopped by after, congratulating me on the role in the new place. He told me my pay was going to be much higher than initially discussed, but that the scope of the role would also be way different. I asked him to explain what he meant, and he just said that I'd figure it out over time. He was insistent that if I did whatever he asked in a timely manner, that I'd live a safe and fulfilling life. And so, for some strange fucking reason, you then thought it'd be a great idea to text me to come here? No. I never texted you. I never texted anyone. I ignored everyone's calls, messages, everything. I didn't want anyone to get sucked up into this nonsense with me. But I guess it didn't matter anyways. Something reached out to you, pretending to be me. Which means that something wants you here. I tensed up. So, I mean, we should get the fuck out of here then, right? Why didn't you ever leave? Funny enough, I almost did. But then someone explained the ambulances to me. Ambulances? Yeah, they should be here soon. Bryce put a finger to his lips. The room went quiet for minutes, until the distant roars of an ambulance reached our ears. Bryce got up and moved to the kitchen window. I followed. The siren's blare grew louder and clearer. Outside the window, we could see it approaching. It turned a corner and parked on the road only a few houses away. Then, I saw it. The back door of the ambulance opened up, and out stepped a man cloaked in thick garb from head to toe. He pulled a stretcher out the back door. Then another, then another. All of the stretchers had people on them. People whose heads had been completely pulverized. Clumps of crimson red flesh and cartilage where faces should have been. Once all of the stretchers had been pulled out and left on the road, the cloaked man re-entered the ambulance from the back, then closed the doors. The siren blasted again and the vehicle drove off. Bry, what the fuck, what the actual fuck, I am freaking the fuck out. Bryce just stared at the stretchers on the street. They were gently rolling off in different directions. Aw man, he said, noticing a particular demolished body on one of the stretchers. I like that guy. We went grocery shopping together one time. Who the fuck are those people? People who tried to leave. That's what happens to them. And they're just left on the street? Sometimes. Other times, they're brought to the incinerator, or buried, or chopped up, or occasionally dropped off at someone's house. I was on the verge of a full-blown panic attack. Instinctively, I pulled out my phone and queued up the numbers 911. Wait, Rose, you don't want to do that. Rose, stop. His words bounced right off me. My brain was on autopilot, my body was moving on its own now. I ran into one of the rooms, slammed the doors shut, and then leaned against it. He knocked violently. Rose, you don't know what you're doing. Please hang up. Please. Everything was fine. I had a half-baked plan in mind. I would call the number, then ask the operator to transfer me to a different county. The NYPD. They'd know what to do. I hit call and waited for an answer. Finally 911, what's your emergency? Hi. I replied. I need to get connected to the closest police department outside this jurisdiction. Maybe New York's? Sure. Can you let me know what your emergency is? Bryce pounded with even more force. Yeah, so, there was an ambulance. It stopped on our street. It had bodies in it, dead bodies on stretchers that looked like they'd been completely fucked up, and then the bodies were just thrown on the street and... Right. And sorry, these were people who were trying to leave town? What? I'm sorry. Could you say that again? Yes. Were the bodies in the stretchers people who tried to leave the area? She said the last 6 words slowly, as if she thought I was stupid. Stunned, I tried to redirect her back to the point. There was also a man who showed up in our yard. He had a picture of me. There's no way he could have had a picture of... Right, and sorry, did you take a photo before this man showed up? What? Bryce was seemingly ramming the door with his whole body now. I was struggling to keep it closed. Where are you now? We can send someone to you immediately. No, thanks. Are you sure, ma'am? I promise it'll be fun. Horrified, I hung up. I released my hold on the door and it burst open, sending me tumbling backwards onto the floor. Bryce entered, looming above me in anger. You didn't tell them where we were, did you? I desperately shook my head. No, I didn't. He sighed in relief, as if his whole body were exhaling with him. Thank fucking God. He addressed me with disappointed dad intensity. You have to stop doing that. Fucking please. If they called someone to this place, you could have gotten us killed, or even worse. I've heard stories, man. The people in this neighborhood talk. I stopped myself from speculating on what worse meant. Where the fuck are we, Bry? I asked. What the fuck is this? I don't know. He wore exasperation on his face. I could tell he was at his own breaking point. I got up and gave him a hug. More for my sanity than anything else. As I held him, the sinking, skin-crawling sensation of feeling trapped consumed me. I wanted to sob, but I just couldn't. We returned to the living room and tried our best to settle in again. I'm trying, he said, to piece together exactly what's going on here. I have some idea of the things we should avoid doing, but still, there are lots of question marks. Aha, I said nervously. I took a quick peek outside and spotted a sign. Shaped like an arrow pointing to the left, it read, exit this way. Before I could ask more questions, I heard his phone vibrate. He checked it, then sighed. They have another job for me, he said. Another job? Yeah. A task I was hoping I could avoid for some time. Wish me luck. He went back to his room. When he emerged, he was wearing a cloak not too dissimilar to the one the ambulance driver was wearing. He left some time ago now. He gave me some clear directives before stepping out. Keep the doors locked until he's back, and try not to panic. I'll try not to overthink the second one. He also showed me a special hand signal that he'd use when he comes back. He told me that I should, under no circumstances, open the door until he flashes the gesture. It's a good thing he told me. 'Cause only an hour after he left, it felt like he had already returned. He's standing at the door now, softly knocking while wearing a wide smile on his face. He hasn't flashed the signal yet, so I'll probably hold on letting him in.